The world of gymnastics is often seen as graceful, powerful, and awe-inspiring, but behind the dazzling performances lies a dangerous truth. One small mistake can turn deadly. Over the years, gymnastics has seen tragedies that shook not only the sporting community but the world at large, reminding us just how unforgiving this sport can be. From fatal training accidents to heartbreaking competition falls, these are 5 of the most terrifying gymnastic deaths ever recorded. Samantha Serio was the embodiment of balance of strength, intellect, and purpose. A senior at Auburn University, she wasn't just a gymnast, she was a scholar, an engineer, a perfectionist. While others chased fame, Samantha chased the stars literally. With a job offer from Boeing and her aerospace engineering degree nearly complete, she seemed destined to conquer every challenge she set her mind to. On the mat, she moved with elegance and precision. Off it, she carried herself with humility and discipline. Teammates admired her. Coaches trusted her. The future was hers to command. And then, in a single, brutal moment, it all changed. April 5th, 2019. NCAA Regional Semifinals in Baton Rouge. It should have been another exhilarating performance. One more chance for Samantha to help Auburn advance. The arena buzzed with energy. Music, cheers, chalk dust in the air, routine warm-ups. Nothing out of the ordinary. Samantha stepped onto the floor with quiet focus, ready to pour 18 years of her life into a final, flawless routine. Then came the tumbling pass, the double front flip, and then the sound. A sickening, heart-stopping collapse. She had under-rotated by just a fraction of a second. It was enough. Both knees buckled. She crumpled to the mat, screaming in pain. Tendons tore, knees dislocated. The music stopped. The crowd went silent. Medical staff rushed in, but even as she remained conscious, the agony was unbearable. Within hours, video footage of the accident had spread across the internet. Millions watched. Millions dissected the worst moment of her life. And Samantha, already grappling with unimaginable pain, saw her private disaster turned into public spectacle. "My pain is not your entertainment," she tweeted. Later, in an interview with Today, she said, "You kind of want to watch it just to see what happens, but you don't think about the people it could impact." Her courage became a new kind of strength, not about sticking a landing, but about reclaiming her dignity. Weeks later, she posted on Instagram, "I am hanging up my grips and leaving the chalk behind." Gymnastics was over, but Samantha's voice remained firm, her spirit unbroken. Her next goal? Walk down the aisle on her own feet? Through multiple surgeries and months of grueling therapy, she fought back, refusing to let her body dictate her future. And when she finally walked down that aisle, she smiled with every step, a victory of resilience over tragedy. Her story didn't just end with retirement. It sparked a conversation. Why were dangerous routines still rewarded? Why weren't safer measures in place to protect athletes like her? Coach Jeff Graba later called that night one of the toughest of my life, but Samantha's grace became a guidepost for everyone who witnessed it. She reminded the world that true strength isn't only about what happens in the air, it's about how you rise when everything falls.
The 18-year-old man who fell from a light pole during the Eagles celebration has died. Tyler Sabapathy had been on life support since Sunday when he fell at 15th and Market Streets in Center City.
January 26, 2025, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. The streets of Center City pulsed with chaos and joy as thousands of Eagles fans flooded the night, their voices echoing against glass towers, fireworks bursting like cannons in the winter sky, green smoke, chants of "Fly, Eagles, fly," and wall-to-wall people turned downtown into a sea of frenzy. Among the revelers was 18-year-old Tyler Sabapathy, a freshman at Temple University. Not just another face in the crowd, Tyler was a decorated gymnast, a prodigy who had collected more than 120 medals in competition. His friends described him as fearless, relentless, and full of promise. That night, caught in the electric storm of victory, he looked like every bit the young champion he was. At the corner of 15th and Market, adrenaline surged. Tyler spotted the light pole, slick with condensation, already swarmed by fans daring each other to climb. To most, it was dangerous. To Tyler, it was instinct. Years of training, balance, and aerial control made him believe he could handle it. Cheers erupted as he scaled higher, his gymnast's body pulling against the steel, legs hooking, arms steady. For a moment, the pole became his apparatus, the crowd his audience, but celebration has a cruel way of turning. A slip so fast, so merciless, sent him crashing down. The roar of the crowd twisted into screams as Tyler's body twisted midair, then struck the unforgiving concrete below. He landed hard on his back, the whiplash of his skull against pavement echoing louder than any firework. People rushed toward him in shock, the night's joy collapsing into horror. Paramedics carved through the chaos, sirens splitting the celebration as they raced him to Jefferson Hospital. Doctors worked frantically. For 2 days, his family and teammates held on, praying over every machine that kept him alive. But the trauma was too severe. His brain injuries left no room for recovery. On January 28th, Tyler Sabathia slipped away, just 18 years old. Temple University's president tried to put the unthinkable into words. The loss of a promising 18-year-old man like Tyler is both tragic and traumatic. There are no words that can make sense of it. Tyler wasn't just thriving academically in exercise and sports science. He was admired for his self-discipline, for the way he pushed beyond limits in everything he did. His professors saw a future leader. His teammates remembered his grit, his laughter, his unmatched work ethic. His family remembered the boy who had left Toronto full of dreams, only to never return. Video from that night still lingers online. Revelers climbing poles, fireworks cutting across the skyline, strangers cheering as the city drowned in celebration. But for those who knew Tyler, the footage is unbearable. Because that night, the victory Philadelphia celebrated became the night one young gymnast fell for the last time. A boy who once seemed untouchable in the air, grounded forever by one slip. It was November 8th, 2019 in Hampton, Connecticut. Inside the familiar walls of the New Era Gymnastics facility, 20-year-old Melanie Coleman was doing what she had done for most of her life, training on the uneven bars. To anyone watching, it would have looked like just another routine practice. It only takes one misstep to change everything. Melanie slipped. In an instant, a fall turned catastrophic. She hit the mat with a force that immediately signaled something was very wrong. Paramedics were called. Her coach, Thomas Alberti, who had trained her for nearly a decade, was one of the first to reach her. He knew every part of her technique, every step of her routine. And now he was watching the unthinkable unfold before his eyes. Melanie was rushed to Yale New Haven Hospital. The doctors tried everything, but the spinal injury was devastating. 2 days later, on November 10th, Melanie Coleman was gone. She was only 20. The news broke hearts, not just in Connecticut, not just in the gymnastics community, but across the country. Because this wasn't some reckless dare or a risky new stunt. This was a standard training session. Melanie was a seasoned, elite-level gymnast. Her fall was called a freak accident, one of those terrifying moments that makes even the safest spaces feel fragile. She grew up in Milford, Connecticut, where gymnastics wasn't just a sport, it was a family tradition. Her mother had competed. Her sisters had competed. One of them was even her teammate at Southern Connecticut State University. Melanie was following in their footsteps. Earlier that same year, she'd been named a Scholastic All-American by the Women's Collegiate Gymnastics Association, an award that recognized both her academic excellence and athletic dedication. She was studying to become a nurse, just like her older sisters. And even with a demanding college schedule, she still found time to teach young gymnasts, children as young as 2 years old, at the very same gym where she trained. They looked up to her. They mimicked her every move. For many of them, Melanie was their first role model. Her coach, Thomas Alberti, later said, "She didn't care about winning. She wanted everyone to succeed." He still couldn't understand how such a tragedy could happen under normal, safe conditions. The gym was trusted, the equipment sound, but sometimes life doesn't give you a reason. It just leaves you shattered. Melanie's family was devastated. Her mother, Susan, shared through tears, "We spent every day together for the past 20 years. We're going to leave an empty space in our photos for her." And yet, even in death, Melanie was still giving. Her family later revealed she had registered as an organ donor, quietly, without needing recognition. And because of that one choice, she gave others a second chance at life. In the days that followed, her community rose up around her. A GoFundMe campaign raised over $65,000 to support her family. Messages of love poured in from across the country. Coaches and athletes who had never even met her posted tributes.
The Industrial Magistrates Court has fined Gymnastics Townsville $70,000 for breaching the Workplace Health and Safety Act. Gymnastics Townsville was last month found guilty of breaches after the death of a 19-year-old gymnast in June last year. Michelle Maitland fell and hit her head on a section of concrete not covered by a safety mat.
June 18, 2009, Townsville, Australia. The night began like any other. 19-year-old Michelle Maitland rushed out the front door for gymnastics training, her voice echoing through the house as she called to her mother, "Are we having that steak when I get home?" She didn't wait for an answer. She never came back. It was the last time her mother would ever hear her voice. Inside the Aitkenvale gym in Townsville, the air was filled with the rhythmic sounds of practice, feet hitting mats, bodies flipping, coaches shouting encouragement. But that night, one mistake, one overlooked detail, would turn a routine training session into a nightmare. Michelle, full of determination, attempted a backward twisting layout, a move so advanced it's usually reserved for elite gymnasts. She launched herself into the air, body spinning, heart racing. For a split second, everything looked perfect. Then the rotation went too far. Instead of landing safely on the padded surface, Michelle came crashing down head first onto bare concrete. A section of the floor that should have been covered by 6 meters of protective matting had been left exposed. There was only half the required padding, and her skull met the unforgiving surface with unimaginable force. Witnesses say the sound of the impact silenced the gym. Coaches and teammates rushed to her side, but the damage was already done. Michelle was rushed to Townsville General Hospital, her condition critical. Her family gathered, clinging to hope, but by the following day, that hope was gone. Michelle was gone. A daughter, a sister, a friend, the bright, laughing girl who only wanted to relive the joy of gymnastics was taken in the most preventable way imaginable. The aftermath was devastating. Investigations revealed her coach wasn't even qualified to teach the move she was attempting. Someone had shifted the mat earlier in the day and failed to put it back. No one checked, no one corrected it, and because of that, Michelle paid with her life. Her mother later admitted the horrifying truth. Her skull was smashed to smithereens. Words no parent should ever have to say. Her death sent shockwaves through Queensland. A safety review of gymnastics clubs across the state revealed chilling findings. Only 8% of facilities had proper controls to prevent hard surface contact. Dozens of enforcement notices were handed out. Many gyms were operating with unqualified coaches, poor safety planning, and equipment that wasn't even set up correctly. Michelle's death was not an isolated freak accident. It was a tragedy waiting to happen. Townsville Gymnastics was eventually fined $70,000 for breaching safety obligations. But for Michelle's family, no fine, no punishment, no report could ever balance the scales. Her mother, Anne, described it as bitter justice. The safety overhaul came too late for her daughter. "I wasn't expecting her not to come home," she said quietly, still struggling to understand how such negligence could cost so much. On what would have been Michelle's 22nd birthday, her family stood outside the same gym, lighting candles in the dark. Each flame a reminder of a young life cut short. Each flicker a warning to parents, athletes, and coaches everywhere. Anne's message was sharp, almost pleading. Don't take the manager's word for it. Check for yourself. Michelle had left gymnastics years earlier, retiring after countless injuries as a child. But she came back, not as an elite competitor, just as a young woman rediscovering a passion. She wasn't training for medals. She wasn't aiming for fame. She just wanted to enjoy the sport she loved. Instead, she became a symbol of everything that can go wrong when safety is ignored. Her story lingers, a chilling reminder that behind the flips and smiles, gymnastics can turn deadly in an instant. And all it takes is one missing mat. She was only 12, bright, joyful, full of life, the kind of girl who could light up a room without even trying. Trevin Hope. Jocelyn wasn't just a student at Taverham High School in Norfolk. She was a presence, confident, kind, and one of the best gymnasts in her class. No one imagined that an ordinary day in gym class would be her last. It was March 12, 2014. Just another PE session. A simple gymnastics lesson. Nothing extreme, nothing dangerous, just children laughing, stretching, and tumbling across mats under the familiar echo of bouncing sneakers. Near the end of class, students could choose their favorite apparatus. Trevin, as always, was eager. She went for the pommel horse. She had already completed a few successful vaults. Everything seemed normal. She sprinted toward the horse with the grace and determination of a girl who had done this countless times before. But this time, her right foot caught the edge of the apparatus. A fraction of a second, a tiny misstep, Trevin tumbled forward, landing face down on the mat. At first, no one realized how serious it was. She looked like she might recover. Friends gathered around, some thinking she had simply been winded. But then the fear set in. She tried to speak, but the words barely came. Something was terribly wrong. The PE teacher rushed to her side. Staff called for help. The school's pastoral care supervisor, Lynn Hammond, began CPR. Everyone hoped, prayed that she would breathe, that she would be okay. But as Trevin was rushed to Addenbrooke's Hospital in Cambridge, the harsh truth was already taking hold. Doctors confirmed the unthinkable, a catastrophic hyperextension of the neck. Her spinal cord had been critically damaged. Trevin fought for her life for a week, but on March 19, 2014, she passed away. A bright, young life gone in the blink of an eye. The inquest revealed that Trevin had a pre-existing neck condition, one that could have limited her ability to safely participate in high-impact gymnastics. The school was aware, but not all staff had been informed due to an administrative oversight. Investigators were clear. It wasn't negligence. No wrongdoing was found. Even a child with a perfectly healthy neck could have suffered a fatal injury that day. Still, knowing there was no fault offered little comfort. The assistant head teacher, Shirley Naseby, remembered Trevin with tears. She was confident, enthusiastic, one of the better gymnasts in the class, she said. The last memory of Trevin, smiling mid-run, vaulting toward her future, remained painfully vivid. Her parents chose silence in the media, a grief too deep for words, but the school sought to honor her memory. A quiet garden was created, a cherry tree planted in her name. Head teacher Peter Ware said students and teachers still remember her warmth. She always had a smile on her face. She will be remembered with great fondness. The official verdict was accidental, but for anyone who has ever sent a child off to school thinking they were safe, it felt like more. It felt like the very fabric of an ordinary day had been ripped apart, leaving a void that could never be filled. It was July 26, 1994, in Kansas City, Missouri. Christina Christie Renee Henrik was just 22 years old when her body finally gave out. Her organs shut down, one by one, unable to recover from years of damage. And just like that, one of the most talented gymnasts America had ever produced was gone. But this wasn't a story of a single tragic moment. It was a slow, painful unraveling. Christie had always been a fighter. Born July 18, 1972, she was 4 feet, 10 inches, but powerful, graceful, and fiercely determined. By the age of 14, she was competing at the national level, earning her place on the U.S. national gymnastics team just 2 years later. Her rise was fast, and by 1989, she was one of the brightest stars in the sport. She represented the United States at the World Championships in Stuttgart, helping the team secure a 4th-place finish. On the uneven bars, she came heartbreakingly close to a medal. Her future was full of possibility. The Olympics were calling, but behind the smiles, behind the glittering routines, something darker was taking root. At the 1988 World Championships in Budapest, a judge pulled Christie aside and delivered a comment that would forever alter the course of her life. Lose weight if you want to make the Olympic team. She weighed just 95 pounds at the time, so she tried to, desperately. Her eating grew more restrictive. Her workouts became more intense. The pressure became unbearable, but still she smiled. Still she performed. No one could see the war being waged inside her body. Coach Al Fong, who had already endured the trauma of Julissa Gomez's accident just years earlier, began to notice the signs. In 1989, he confronted Christie. He begged her to get help. He arranged meetings with doctors, nutritionists, professionals who might be able to pull her back from the edge. But the damage was already deep. Christie didn't want to stop. She didn't want to lose her dream. She was still chasing perfection, even as her body was fading. Her weight dropped to 47 pounds. By 1990, her body could no longer carry her. She left elite gymnastics the following January. The crowd's applause had quieted, but the voice in her head hadn't. She still wanted to return, still believed she could overcome it. But her body, now so fragile, couldn't keep up with her spirit. The next 4 years were a cycle of hope and heartbreak, hospitalizations, psychiatric care, a carousel of doctors. By the summer of 1994, her condition had grown critical. She was admitted to Research Medical Center in Kansas City, her weight unchanged, her organs failing. For more than 2 weeks, she remained there, but her body had nothing left to give. On July 26th, 8 days after her 22nd birthday, Christy Henrik passed away. Her death was a shockwave, not just for gymnastics, but for all of sports. It forced a reckoning that had been avoided for too long. The judges, the coaches, the commentators, all had to face what the pursuit of perfection had cost. For once, it was no longer possible to look away, and things began to change. Programs were created to help young athletes understand nutrition and mental health. Coaches were trained to spot warning signs. Television networks stopped announcing gymnasts' weights on air. The sport, once obsessed with appearance, was slowly forced to confront its obsession. It wasn't enough to win. It had to be safe to try. He was only 18, but for Nguyen Minh Triet, one of Vietnam's brightest gymnastics prodigies, all of that promise ended in a split second. What should have been just another day at training became the last chapter of a life that had only just begun. It happened during a backflip. He launched himself into the air, body twisting with familiar grace, but the landing was wrong, terribly wrong. His head struck first. His arms and legs stopped responding instantly. Paralysis. He was rushed to Hanoi's E-hospital, then to Bach Mai for emergency surgeries. Machines began doing what his body no longer could, breathing for him, keeping his heart steady. And yet lying there, broken and immobile, he whispered words that cut through every doctor and coach who heard them. "I really appreciate life. I want to keep living." His coach, Major Hao Trung Lin, could barely hold back tears, repeating them. "It made me so emotional. He still had the will to fight," he said. But willpower cannot stitch shattered bones back together. It cannot unbreak a neck. Despite round-the-clock care, Triet's condition slipped further. In April, he was transferred to Thanh Nan Hospital. By then, everyone knew hope was a fragile thing, and yet they clung to it. On May 9th, 2024, that hope finally collapsed into silence. Nguyen Minh Triet was gone. To those who knew him, he had been far more than an athlete. He was the heart of his family, the third of 4 siblings, yet the one holding everything together. His father, retired and piecing together work as a night guard. His mother, sick with cancer. His older brother, too frail to hold a job. And his baby sister, only 5 years old, too young to understand the weight her brother carried. Every month, Triet handed over his entire salary from training, not to buy himself anything, but to keep them afloat. It was a burden no teenager should bear, but he carried it without complaint. And still, he was relentless in the gym. He started gymnastics at 7, joined Vietnam's national youth team by 12, and by 15 he was sweeping national titles year after year. In 2022, he won bronze for the Army team at the 9th National Sports Festival. He was weeks away from finishing high school. He wanted more. Senior competitions, bigger stages, maybe even the Olympics. All of that lay just ahead, until the fall. November 10th, 2023, the National Sports Training Center in Hanoi. Triet attempted 2 backflips into a foam pit, something designed to be safe, but instead of rebounding, his neck snapped under the weight of his landing. A simple miscalculation, and everything changed. In gymnastics, the margin for error is thinner than a blade. In the months that followed, Vietnam's sports community rallied. Donations came in. The Vietnam Gymnastics Federation made sure Triet had the best care possible. Doctors did all they could. His coach admitted that deep down, they knew what the outcome would be. "We knew the chances were slim, but it doesn't hurt any less." He always fought harder in competition than in practice. That spirit, it never left him. When he was laid to rest, more than 200 people gathered. Nguyen Minh Triet's story isn't just about gymnastics, it's about sacrifice. January 26, 2025, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Center City pulsed with electricity. The streets were alive with chaos and jubilation as thousands of Eagles fans poured into every corner, voices ricocheting off glass towers, fireworks exploding like cannon blasts in the winter sky. Green smoke drifted over the crowd in thick clouds. Everywhere, chants of "Fly, Eagles, fly" filled the night, bouncing from building to building, blending with horns, cheers, and the rhythmic pounding of boots on pavement. For one evening, the city itself seemed to breathe with victory. Among the revelers was 18-year-old Tyler Sabapathy, a freshman at Temple University. He wasn't just another face in the crowd. Tyler was a gymnast prodigy, a young man whose talent had earned him more than 120 medals across competitions. Friends and coaches described him as fearless, relentless, precise, and disciplined. He was a young man whose body seemed to defy gravity, whose balance and control made difficult maneuvers look effortless. That night, caught in the electric current of celebration, Tyler moved with the quiet confidence of someone who had mastered the impossible. At the corner of 15th and Market, Tyler's eyes landed on a light pole, slick with condensation. Fans had already begun climbing it, daring one another higher, each ascent greeted with cheers. To most, it was reckless, dangerous. But to Tyler, it was instinct. Years of gymnastics, years of training his body to twist, rotate, and land perfectly, told him he could handle it. He approached, his movements fluid and calculated, almost like stepping onto a familiar apparatus. He gripped the pole, hooked his legs, and began to climb. The crowd cheered, seeing not just a fan celebrating, but a young man who seemed untouchable in the air. For a fleeting moment, everything seemed under control. Tyler's gymnast's precision carried him upward. The pole became his stage, the cheering crowd his audience. But in an instant, the celebration turned to horror. A sudden slip, merciless, sent him plummeting. Time slowed as his body twisted midair, arms flailing in a desperate, instinctive attempt to correct the fall. Then, the unthinkable. He struck the concrete below. The impact reverberated like a gunshot through the crowd. The roar of excitement turned instantly to a chorus of screams. Fireworks and cheers dissolved into gasps of terror. People rushed forward, helpless, faces frozen in disbelief as the night's joy collapsed into a nightmare. Paramedics fought their way through the chaos, sirens cutting through the winter air as Tyler was loaded onto a stretcher and rushed to Jefferson Hospital. Family, friends, and teammates gathered, clutching hope like a lifeline, praying over the machines that kept him alive. But the trauma was devastating. The brain injuries were severe, irreversible. For 2 agonizing days, they waited. And on January 28, 2025, Tyler Sabathia passed away at just 18 years old. The loss sent shockwaves through Temple University, the gymnastics community, and Tyler's hometown in Toronto. The university's president struggled to articulate the grief. The loss of a promising young man like Tyler is both tragic and traumatic. There are no words that can make sense of it. Tyler wasn't only an academic achiever in exercise and sports science. He was admired for his discipline, his relentless drive, and his ability to push beyond limits. Professors saw a future leader. Teammates remembered his grit, his laughter, and his unmatched work ethic. His family remembered the boy who had left Toronto full of dreams, only to have them cut short in an instant. Video footage from that night still circulates online. Fans climbing poles, fireworks slicing across the skyline, the city awash in celebration. But for those who knew Tyler, the footage is unbearable. What was meant to be a night of triumph became a night of permanent loss. A boy who had seemed untouchable, whose body had mastered gravity, was grounded forever by a single tragic misstep. In the days that followed, tributes poured in from across the gymnastics world. Coaches, athletes, and even strangers took to social media to honor his talent, his spirit, and the bright, boundless energy that Tyler carried. Candlelight vigils were held. Messages of sorrow and remembrance flooded in. Yet the pain remained acute for those closest to him, the family who had watched their prodigy soar, only to see him fall in the most cruel of ways. Tragedy struck the gymnastics world on September 13, 2025, when 19-year-old Naufal Takdir Al-Bari, one of Indonesia's brightest rising stars, was training in Penza, Russia. The young athlete, preparing for his country's upcoming World Championships, was attempting a high bar routine, a skill meant to dazzle, to push the limits of human strength and precision. But in a heartbeat, everything changed. Al-Bari fell awkwardly into a foam pit, the result of what was described as a severe neck injury. The crowd of spectators may have been absent, but the echo of that moment would resonate across continents. Rushed to GA Zakaran Hospital, Al-Bari spent 12 agonizing days in intensive care. Hope lingered in the hearts of his coaches, teammates, and family. But despite the best efforts of doctors, he passed away on September 25th. Indonesia lost not just a talented gymnast, but a young man whose dreams were intertwined with the nation's pride, a hopeful contender for the 2028 Olympics, whose life was abruptly cut short. The news rippled through the gymnastics community like a shockwave. Ita Yuliati, president of the Indonesian Gymnastics Federation, spoke with heartbreak. Al-Bahri was a talented young athlete and a good person. Indonesian gymnastics has lost one of the nation's finest sons. This is a deep blow and sorrow for us. May the family be given strength. Across borders, the Russian Gymnastics Federation confirmed it was investigating the incident. Vasily Titov, the federation's vice president, offered condolences and assistance with repatriating Al-Bahri's body, adding, "Unfortunately, the athlete was not prepared to perform such a complex element." The timing of the tragedy made it even more poignant, with the 2025 Artistic Gymnastics World Championships set to take place in Jakarta just a month later. Al-Bahri's absence left a void that could not be filled. He had been expected to compete for medals at SEA Games 33 and had the potential to represent Indonesia on the Olympic stage. His passing, CNN Indonesia reported, was a heavy blow to the country's gymnastics scene. And for many, it served as a chilling reminder of just how fragile life can be, even for the strongest and most disciplined athletes. Al-Bahri's accident evokes memories of past gymnastics tragedies, from Julissa Gomez, who was paralyzed after a vault and later died from complications, to Elena Mukhina, the Soviet star whose life was claimed by the Thomas Salto in 1980. For Al-Bahri, the pursuit of excellence ended in heartbreak, leaving a nation and a sport mourning the loss of a promising life taken too soon. In the quiet aftermath of his passing, fans, fellow athletes, and young gymnasts around the world are left to reflect. Even amid the beauty, precision, and artistry of gymnastics, danger always lurks, a single moment capable of shattering dreams forever. It was July 3, 1980, in Minsk, just 2 weeks before the Moscow Olympics. Inside the Minsk Palace of Sport, 20-year-old Elena Mukhina stood alone under the fluorescent lights, preparing for yet another grueling training session. Only 2 years earlier, Elena had shocked the world. In 1978, at the World Championships in Strasbourg, she claimed the all-around gold, defeating legends like Nadia Comaneci and Nelly Kim. A star was born. Soviet pride soared, and Elena was suddenly no longer just a gymnast, she was a national symbol. But behind the glitter of medals and state praise was a darker truth. Elena was trapped inside a brutal system that demanded perfection at any cost. Her body was already breaking down. A year before, she had broken her leg, a serious injury that should have kept her out for months. But in the Soviet sports machine, recovery wasn't a priority. Her cast was removed too early. She was forced to drop weight fast. The pain, irrelevant. The weakness, ignored, because all that mattered was the Olympics. And then came the final blow, the Thomas Salto, a tumbling pass so dangerous it was designed for male gymnasts. Few women even dared to attempt it. Elena didn't want to. She told her coach, Mikhail Klemenko, again and again, it's too risky, but her protests were brushed aside like dust. Klemenko insisted she learn it. If she refused, she knew what would happen. She'd be replaced. So that day, July 3rd, she ran, she tumbled, and as she began the Thomas Salto, she under-rotated. In a flash, her chin slammed into the floor with a sickening crack. The gym fell silent. She wasn't moving. Elena had broken her neck. She was instantly paralyzed from the neck down. As the news spread behind closed doors, panic set in, not about her injury, but about the image of Soviet dominance. They told the media she had fallen from a balance beam. Others said it happened during a vault run. Anything but the truth. Anything but the fact that she had been forced to attempt a move she had warned might kill her. They blamed Elena, called her careless. But those who knew her knew the truth. She had seen this coming. She had begged for caution. In one of her rare interviews, she said quietly, "It was going to happen. I told them I could break my neck." And she did. Elena didn't lash out in anger. She didn't name names. Instead, she exposed the system that saw athletes not as people, but as tools for national glory. Victories were more important than lives, she said. She didn't even fully blame her coach. To her, he was just another gear in the machine, following orders, doing what was expected. But the impact of her injury rippled beyond her own tragedy. Nelly Kim, a teammate and fierce competitor, said she was shaken to her core. Why was she being made to do something she wasn't ready for? Kim asked. After witnessing the cost firsthand, she quietly retired after the 1980 Games. Elena would receive medals later, ceremonial honors like the Order of the Badge of Honor and the Olympic Order, but none of it erased the years of suffering. None of it gave her back her body, her youth, or her dream. She endured 26 years in that state, and on December 22, 2006, she passed away at age 46.
Gymnastics Townsville was last month found guilty of breaches after the death of a 19-year-old gymnast in June last year. Michelle Maitland fell and hit her head on a section of concrete.
June 18th, 2009, Townsville, Australia. The night started like any other. 19-year-old Michelle Maitland bounded out the front door, calling back to her mother, "Are we having that steak when I get home?" She never waited for an answer and she never came back. That was the last time her mother would hear her voice. Inside the Aitkenvale gym, the familiar rhythm of practice filled the air. Feet hitting mats, bodies flipping, coaches shouting encouragement. But on that night, one misstep, one overlooked detail, would turn routine training into tragedy. Michelle, determined and focused, attempted a backward twisting layout, a move meant for elite gymnasts. She soared into the air, body spinning, heart racing. For a fleeting moment, everything seemed perfect. Then, disaster struck. Instead of landing on the safety of padded mats, Michelle crashed headfirst onto bare concrete. A section of the floor that should have been shielded by meters of protective matting had been left exposed. There was only half the required padding. Her skull collided with the unforgiving surface with catastrophic force. The sound echoed like a grim warning through the gym. Coaches and teammates rushed to her side, but it was too late. Rushed to Townsville General Hospital. Michelle's condition was critical. Her family clung to hope, but by the next day that hope had vanished. Michelle was gone. A bright, laughing daughter, sister, and friend had been taken in the most preventable way imaginable. Investigations revealed chilling negligence. Her coach wasn't qualified to teach the move she attempted. Someone had moved the mat earlier and failed to replace it. No one double-checked. And because of that single lapse, Michelle lost her life. Her mother, Anne, later recounted the horrifying truth. Her skull was smashed to smithereens. Words no parent should ever speak. The tragedy sent shockwaves through Queensland. Safety audits across gymnastics clubs exposed alarming deficiencies. Only 8% of facilities had adequate measures to prevent contact with hard surfaces. Many gyms operated with unqualified coaches, poor planning, and unsafe equipment. Michelle's death wasn't a freak accident. It was a disaster waiting to happen. Townsville Gymnastics was eventually fined $70,000 for breaching safety obligations. But for Michelle's family, no fine, no report, no punishment could restore what was lost. Anne called it bitter justice. "I wasn't expecting her not to come home," she said quietly, still grappling with the weight of such preventable loss. On what would have been Michelle's 22nd birthday, her family gathered outside the same gym, lighting candles in the dark. Each flickering flame was a tribute, a warning, a reminder of a life cut far too short. Anne's plea to others was stark and urgent. Don't take the manager's word for it. Check for yourself. Michelle had returned to gymnastics not as a competitor chasing medals, but as a young woman reclaiming a passion she loved. She wasn't seeking fame, just joy, yet her story became a haunting testament to what can happen when safety is ignored. A chilling reminder that behind every flip, every landing, the smallest oversight can turn deadly.
Over on the vault. 6 Mario Marchetti scores 14.333 for parallel bars. The next performer.
He was only 23, but already a national hero. Anton Malaysia had stood on the Olympic podium in Amsterdam just 2 years earlier, bronze medal around his neck, his future wide open, his name whispered as one of the rising greats. And yet, on a rain-soaked day in the summer of 1930, all of that promise ended, not with the roar of a crowd, but with silence. What should have been another step toward immortality became a tragedy that haunts gymnastics to this day. The World Championships in Luxembourg had been cursed from the beginning. The skies opened up, rain pounding the city until organizers were forced to abandon the stadium. The solution was hasty, careless, move the competition into a cramped school gym, set up the apparatus on thin, unfit mats, and hope no one noticed. No time for proper safeguards. No thought for what might happen if something went wrong. But the athletes had trained too long, dreamed too hard, and so the event pressed forward. Anton, known to friends as Tone, took his place on the rings. His movements were clean, precise, his body flowing with the kind of strength only years of sacrifice could forge. Then came the dismount, the final note in his routine. But when his body hit the ground, there was no safe cushion to break the fall. The mat, barely more than a layer of padding, gave way instantly. He collapsed, his body crumpling under the impact. There were no flashing cameras, no medical teams charging in, just stunned silence, the sound of hurried footsteps, panicked whispers filling the gym. He was rushed to a local hospital, but the truth was obvious from the start. His spine had shattered, the kind of injury no young athlete can survive. He held on through the night. By the morning of July 15, 1930, Anton Malej was gone, and yet the competition continued. His teammates, reeling from shock, chose to compete anyway. Josip Primožić went on to win the all-around, the Yugoslav team taking third place. But what is victory when one of your brothers never makes it back to stand beside you? The cheers rang hollow, medals heavy with grief. This wasn't fate. It wasn't bad luck. Fellow gymnast Edvard Antosevic, who had once shared the Olympic podium with Anton, later pointed to the truth: negligence, the rushed relocation, the unfit equipment, the mats that were barely mats at all. Even Leon Stukelj, another Yugoslav legend, slipped from the high bar that day and was forced to withdraw. The warnings were there, but Anton paid the final price. When his body returned to Ljubljana 3 days later, the entire city seemed to stop breathing. Tabor Hall became a place of mourning as more than 10,000 people came to say their final goodbye. His casket passed slowly through Skopje Loka and into Bohinjska Bistrica, where the boy who once dreamed beneath the mountain skies was finally laid to rest. His grave, marked with a bronze bust, stands as a reminder: even legends can fall. But his story did not end there. A memorial competition was founded in his honor in 1970. Streets in Ljubljana and Bohinjska Bistrica bear his name. His legacy lives on in the movement he once embodied, in the chants of athletes who know that the sport he died for must always carry the weight of his sacrifice. Anton Malej did not die in war. He did not die in battle. He died doing what he loved, betrayed not by his body, but by the failure of those who should have protected him. And perhaps that is the most haunting truth of all. It was May 1988 in Tokyo, Japan. The crowd buzzed with excitement as gymnasts from around the world gathered for the World Sports Fair. Among them was a quiet, focused 15-year-old from the United States, Julissa Gomez. Julissa had earned her place through grit and grace. She was seen as a serious contender for the 1988 U.S. Olympic team, and Tokyo was supposed to be a stepping stone in her rising career. Born on November 4, 1972 in San Antonio, Texas, Julissa came from humble beginnings. Her parents, Otilia and Ramiro Gomez, were former farm workers who had worked tirelessly to give their daughter a shot at something bigger. Gymnastics had become Julissa's passion by the age of 5. She was a natural. By 10, she was already training under Bela Karolyi in Houston, climbing fast through the junior ranks. In 1986, she placed 4th in the all-around at the U.S. Championships. By the next year, she was representing the country on international stages. Her specialty, the vault. But that skill, the very one she poured her energy into, would soon become the most tragic part of her story. Behind her calm demeanor was an athlete under pressure. In 1987, Julissa made a tough decision to leave Karolyi's gym, trading his notoriously harsh coaching style for a more compassionate approach under Al Fong in Blue Springs, Missouri. Fong believed in her, supported her, but the Olympic dream was ticking louder every day. As the games drew closer, Julissa began training on the Yurchenko vault, a notoriously dangerous move that begins with a round-off onto a springboard, followed by a back handspring onto the vaulting horse. It's breathtaking when done right, but devastating when it goes wrong. And for Julissa, it often did. Her coaches noticed her struggle with the technique, her inconsistency, her hesitation, but the push never stopped. She had to compete with it. Everyone was watching. Everyone had expectations. And then came May 5th. During warm-ups for the vault final, Julissa sprinted toward the apparatus like she had done 100 times before. But in a split second, everything unraveled. Her foot slipped. Her takeoff faltered. And then, in front of horrified onlookers, she slammed headfirst into the vaulting horse. The gym fell silent. The impact was immediate and brutal. Julissa lay motionless. She had broken her neck. The doctors confirmed what everyone feared. She was paralyzed from the neck down. Coach Fong was there. He had trained her. And now he was watching his athletes suffer the unimaginable. He would later speak out, questioning the relentless pressure on young gymnasts to perform complex, high-risk skills without enough safety guarantees. Julissa was rushed to a hospital as her parents flew across the ocean from Texas, desperate to be by her side. Doctors worked to stabilize her, but a horrifying complication struck. The oxygen deprivation caused irreversible brain damage. Julissa slipped into a coma. She couldn't move, couldn't speak, only blink. Her story faded from headlines, but her parents never left her side. For 3 long years, they cared for their daughter in silence, holding on to hope that never came. And then, on August 8, 1991, Jalisa passed away. She was just 18. Her death sent shockwaves through the gymnastics world. It wasn't just a tragedy, it was a wake-up call. The International Gymnastics Federation responded with sweeping changes. They made U-shaped springboard mats mandatory in competition. They replaced the old, narrow vaulting horse with a safer, wider vaulting table. And, most importantly, they instituted a new rule. Any gymnast attempting the Yurchenko vault without proper safety measures would receive a score of 0. Coach Fong would later say that gymnasts need to know the risks, but stay focused on their goals. It was a hard lesson, learned at an impossible cost. Jalisa's teammates dedicated their season to her. Her parents urged other young athletes to keep chasing their dreams, just as their daughter had done. It was August 15, 2001, in Deva, Romania, the heart of the country's gymnastics empire. The same gym that had produced legends. Inside, 12-year-old Alexandra Hucci trained quietly, her tiny frame, just 55 pounds, moving through familiar drills. She was supposed to be taking it easy, nursing a sore wrist that kept her from full routines. But everyone knew Alexandra was different. She had that spark, that rare presence coaches whispered about when no one else was listening. Romania had seen many prodigies before her, but there was something about this girl. That morning looked like any other. No falls, no stumbles, no warning signs. Alexandra climbed from the pit, approached her coach, Liliana Kozma, and spoke so softly she had to lean in to hear. "I need to go to the restroom," she said. Minutes later, she came back pale, trembling. "I can't continue," she whispered. She had just thrown up. Her coach didn't hesitate. Straight to the school doctor. Alexandra was still conscious then. At least that's what the physician believed. But the nurse who rode in the ambulance would later insist otherwise. "She was already in a coma when we arrived," she said, still shaken. "We asked if she had fallen. They said no. This wasn't a crash. This wasn't an accident on the beam or vault. It was something darker. Something happening inside her own body. From the pediatric hospital in Deva to the county ICU, and finally, airlifted to Timisoara's neurosurgery unit, Alexandra was passed from one desperate team of doctors to another. For 5 days, machines kept her breathing as Romania held its breath too. News bulletins showed her face, delicate, serious, almost too young for the weight she carried. Flowers and religious icons piled up at the hospital doors. Strangers prayed for a child they had never met. The truth was cruel. It wasn't gymnastics. It wasn't overwork or injury. Alexandra had been carrying a hidden time bomb from birth, a congenital malformation of blood vessels deep in her brain. That morning, it burst. A sudden hemorrhage flooded her brain with blood, sending her into a 3rd-degree coma. No fall, no warning, just a quiet collapse into the arms of fate. Back home in a poor village near Falticeni, her parents didn't even know yet. They had no phone. By the time the news reached them, their daughter was already clinging to life by wires and machines. Alexandra had begun gymnastics at 6 years old, chasing the shadow of her idols who had won gold in Sydney the year before. She had already claimed a national title for her age group. When reporters asked what she wanted most, her answer was steady, almost solemn. "The Olympics. I have no time for friends, but I like the gym." She was 12, and speaking like someone who had already traded childhood for destiny. But destiny betrayed her. On August 20th, after 5 silent days, Alexandra was gone. There was no dramatic fall, no crash echoing across the gym, only a whisper to her coach, a pale face, and the quiet unraveling of a dream the world never got to see. To this day, her name is spoken softly in Romanian gymnastics circles, a reminder of how fragile even the brightest sparks can be.
Very powerful young lady. She was the China Games gold medalist on this event. Huge vault.
It was July 1998, New York City pulsing with the energy of the Goodwill Games. Inside the arena, 17-year-old Chinese gymnast Song Lan stood poised at the edge of the vault runway. She had done this 1,000 times before. Just a year earlier, she was China's national vault champion. This moment was meant to be another stepping stone, a routine warm-up, a simple timer vault, just muscle memory and air. Nothing dangerous, nothing unusual. But in a split second, everything changed. As Sang sprinted forward and launched into the air, something was wrong. Mid-flight, she lost control. There was no time to correct her form, no way to adjust. She came crashing down, head first. The sound of the impact silenced the room. When she didn't move, panic set in. Sang was rushed to Nassau University Medical Center. Emergency spinal surgery followed. Doctors worked to realign her spine and stabilize her shattered body, but the damage was already done. Sang Lan was now paralyzed from the chest down. Her legs, her independence, her dream of gymnastics, all gone. In the chaos that followed, a chilling accusation began to surface. Sang, still in her hospital bed, claimed the fall wasn't just a tragic accident. She said a coach from another team had stepped into the vault area moments before her attempt, removing the safety mat without warning, without telling anyone. A sudden, reckless act, one that would leave her broken. But when she tried to speak, officials dismissed her. They said she was confused, that her mind was clouded from trauma. The headlines focused on her injury. The world sent flowers. Celebrities offered their support. Leonardo DiCaprio, Celine Dion, even Christopher Reeve. But as the lights dimmed, Sang found herself living a different kind of nightmare. While recovering in the U.S., she was placed in the care of K.S. Liu and Gina Hu Hung, a Chinese-American couple who promised to support her through recovery. At first, they were her lifeline. But that lifeline began to twist. Sang later revealed that they had taken control of nearly every aspect of her life. They restricted her speech, blocked her from speaking openly about the incident, and allegedly withheld care they had promised to provide. Her medical needs were left unmet. Her voice silenced again. In 1999, she returned to China. There, the government hailed her as a national symbol of courage, a face of resilience. She lit the Olympic torch in 2008, hosted television shows, smiled for cameras. But behind that public image, Sang was still struggling, still hurting. She said the same institutions that once held her up had slowly let her fall again. Her therapy grew infrequent. Her legs weakened further. Every step forward was uphill and lonely. Then, in 2011, 13 years after that fateful vault, Sang spoke out. She filed a lawsuit in the United States naming AOL, Time Warner, USA Gymnastics, TIG Insurance, and the very couple who had once cared for her. The accusations were staggering. She claimed the fall was avoidable, the aftermath mishandled, and her trust betrayed. She demanded $1.8 billion in damages. But this wasn't just about money, it was a battle for truth. Sang said her caretakers had spread lies about her, tried to manipulate public opinion, and even acted inappropriately while she was most vulnerable. A police report was filed, allegations piled up, and public opinion fractured. Some called her brave, finally reclaiming her voice. Others accused her of being bitter, or worse, manipulated. But Sang stood firm. After all these years, she wasn't chasing pity. She wanted accountability. Her legal case became tangled in delays and limitations, but she never let it fade. Her fight was no longer just personal. It was universal. For every athlete who felt used, for every young girl told to stay quiet, for every victim who'd been buried under silence and shame.
Lady, she was the China Games gold medalist on this event. Huge vault.
She was already a star before most kids her age knew how to spell gymnastics. Sang Lan was a force in China's elite sports system, graceful, explosive, and disciplined beyond her years. By 14, she had swept every event at the Zhejiang Province Championships. By 17, she was one of China's most promising vaulters, eyes locked on the global stage. She didn't make it to the Olympics, but she was close, too close, and then everything changed. It was July 1998, New York City, the Goodwill Games. Sang was warming up for the vault final, a simple drill called a timer, the kind gymnasts do 1,000 times without thinking. She sprinted down the runway, planted her hands, launched, and never got up again. She landed hard, motionless, staring up at the arena lights, unable to move. Medics rushed in. A stunned silence fell over the gym. Spectators looked on, confused at first, then horrified. Sang was whisked to Nassau University Medical Center. Surgeons performed emergency spinal realignment and cervical fusion, but the truth came fast and cruel. The damage to her spinal cord was irreversible. Sang Lan, once destined to soar, was now paralyzed from the chest down. Her body was broken, but her spirit refused to be. Sang stayed in New York for nearly a year, undergoing grueling rehab at Mount Sinai. It wasn't just about learning how to live again. It was about staying seen in a world that had once celebrated her flips, but now didn't know what to say. Celebrities came. Leonardo DiCaprio, Celine Dion, even Superman himself, Christopher Reeve. They offered words of hope, but nothing could undo the fall. She was even honored in Times Square on New Year's Eve, smiling through unimaginable pain. But beneath that public grace, something darker lingered. Years later, Sang finally spoke out. She claimed her injury hadn't been a freak accident. It had been negligence. According to her, another team's coach had walked into the vaulting area mid-run and removed a crucial safety mat just before her takeoff. She says she told officials immediately, even from her hospital bed, but her voice was dismissed. They told her she was confused, that she had brain damage, that she should be quiet. Sang wasn't quiet. She accused the Chinese national gymnastics team of abandoning her after the accident, of discarding her like a broken doll once she could no longer win medals, and when she was finally old enough to stand up for herself, she began preparing to sue the event's organizers. Not for money, but for truth, because Sang Lan wasn't just another tragic sports story. She became something more powerful. Back in China, she transformed into a symbol, an advocate for disability rights, and a reminder that broken bones don't always mean broken spirits. A television miniseries was made about her. She hosted her own Olympic-themed TV show. She became a torchbearer for the 2008 Beijing Olympics and enrolled at Peking University, determined to live a full, visible life. She even trained for the Paralympics, hoping to represent her country in table tennis. And through it all, she fought against pain, against silence, against invisibility. She regained partial use of her arms. She kept doing therapy. She kept dreaming. Sang Lan never made it to the Olympic podium. But her story, raw, unfinished, painfully real, might be more powerful than any gold medal, because she showed the world that while gymnastics may have taken her ability to walk, it never stole her voice. He was only 23, but already a national hero. Anton Malaysia had tasted Olympic glory, winning bronze in Amsterdam just 2 years earlier, and now stood poised to cement his place among the world's best. But in the summer of 1930, on a rainy day in Luxembourg, everything unraveled, quietly, fatally, and without warning. What was meant to be another step in a celebrated career turned into one of the darkest moments in gymnastics history. The World Championships that year, still known then as the International Tournament, had already begun under a cloud of uncertainty. Literally, rain had poured across Luxembourg, forcing organizers to relocate the competition from a proper stadium to a makeshift gym inside a nearby school. The decision was rushed, the setup wasn't ready, and the equipment fatally inadequate. But the show went on. Anton Malaysia, known affectionately as Tone, stepped onto the rings, an event he had trained for relentlessly, ever since joining the so-called movement as a teenager. His form was sharp, his rhythm strong, but as he dismounted from the rings, something went wrong. The landing mat beneath him, thin, poorly secured, far below competition standards, did nothing to absorb the impact. He collapsed in agony. No cameras, no medics rushing in with stretchers, just confusion, stunned silence, and then frantic whispers. He was taken to a local hospital in Luxembourg, but it was clear from the beginning this wasn't just a bad fall. It was his spine. The damage was irreversible. He lingered through the night, and on July 15th, 1930, Anton Malaysia died. Even in the face of that unimaginable loss, the competition continued. The Yugoslavian team, stunned and grieving, chose to compete anyway. Their teammate Josip Primožić went on to win the all-around. The team took third place, but the celebration was muted. What do medals mean when one of your own never made it back? It wasn't just bad luck. Fellow gymnast Edvard Antošević, who had stood beside Mala on that 1928 Olympic podium, later spoke out. He blamed the rushed relocation, blamed the poor safety, blamed the negligence. After all, 2 Yugoslav athletes had fallen that day. Leon Stukelj slipped from the high bar and had to withdraw, but Anton never got the chance to recover. An investigation later confirmed the worst. The gym floor had been covered in thin, unsuitable mats. There had been no proper preparation, no margin for error. And in this sport, there is no margin for error. Back home in Ljubljana, the sorrow was overwhelming. His body arrived by train on July 18th. Tabor Hall, the heart of the Slovenian Sokol movement, became a shrine. More than 10,000 people came to say goodbye. Mourners lined the streets. His casket passed through Skofja Loka and onto Bohinjska Bistrica, where he was buried beneath the mountain skies of his childhood. His grave bears a bronze bust sculpted by Lojza Dolinar, a reminder that even legends fall, but some leave behind more than medals. Since 1970, an annual memorial competition has been held in his name. Streets in Ljubljana and Bohinjska Bistrica still carry his legacy. Anton Malaysia didn't die in war. He didn't die in battle. He died doing what he loved, in a competition that should have protected him.
Trevin Joslin's mother Hannah arriving at the hearing with a hug for the teacher at the centre of the tragedy. Shirley Naseby, who was running the gym class, said Trevin was enthusiastic and very confident, one of the better gymnasts in the group.
She was only 12, bright, joyful, full of spark, the kind of girl who walked into a room and made it warmer without even trying. Trevin Hope Joslin wasn't just a student at Taverham High School in Norfolk. She was a presence, confident, kind, one of the better gymnasts in her class. No one expected that an ordinary day in gym class would be her last. It was March 12th, 2014. Just another PE session. A basic gymnastics lesson. Nothing extreme, nothing dangerous. Just kids being kids. Laughing, running, stretching across mats and equipment under the soft echo of bouncing sneakers in the school gym. Near the end of the class, students were allowed to pick their favorite apparatus. Trevin, ever eager, chose the pommel horse. She'd already done a few successful vaults. Everything looked fine. She ran up like she'd done a dozen times before. Graceful, determined. But this time, just as she leapt, her right foot caught the edge of the horse. It was a fraction of a second, a tiny misstep, but it was enough. Trevin tumbled forward, face down, hitting the mat hard. At first, it didn't look like a catastrophe. She landed almost in a recovery position. Students gathered. A few thought she'd just been winded. But as she lay there trying to move her lips, barely able to form words, the fear began to set in. Something wasn't right. The PE teacher rushed over. Staff called for help. The school's pastoral care supervisor, Lynn Hammond, began CPR. Everyone was trying, praying that it wasn't as bad as it looked. "You just want to believe a child is still breathing," Hammond later said, her voice shaking from the memory. But even as Trevin was rushed to Addenbrooke's Hospital in Cambridge, reality was already spiraling out of reach. Doctors confirmed what no one wanted to hear: a catastrophic hyperextension injury to the neck. Her spinal cord had been severely damaged. She fought for a week, but on March 19th, 2014, Trevin died. A bright young life extinguished, just like that. It wasn't supposed to happen. She was healthy, strong, but during the inquest it came out that Trevin had a pre-existing neck condition, something that could have limited her ability to safely participate in high-impact sports like gymnastics. The school was aware of it, but somewhere someone missed a step. Due to an administrative oversight, not all staff had been told. Still, it wasn't negligence. It wasn't carelessness. Investigators found no evidence of wrongdoing, and chillingly, the injury she suffered would have been fatal, even in someone with a perfectly normal neck. No one was at fault. But that didn't make it any less tragic. The assistant head teacher who led the class, Shirley Naseby, remembered Trevin with tears and affection. She was confident, enthusiastic, one of the better gymnasts in the class. The last time she saw Trevin whole, she was smiling mid-run, ready to vault toward her future. And then, it was gone. Her parents didn't speak to the media after the inquest. How could they? What words could possibly exist for that kind of loss? But the school tried to keep her memory alive. A quiet garden was built in the school grounds, a cherry tree planted in her name. Head teacher Peter Ware said students and teachers still talk about her with warmth. "She always had a smile on her face," he said, eyes lowered. "She will be remembered with great fondness." In the end, Trevin's death was ruled accidental. But for anyone who's ever sent a child off to school believing they're safe, it didn't feel like just an accident. It felt like a hole ripped open in the fabric of an ordinary day, one that would never quite close. He was just 18, and for most people his age, life is still beginning, full of hopes, choices, and bright, ambitious plans. But for Nguyen Minh Triet, a rising star in Vietnamese gymnastics, that future was stolen in a split second. On what should have been just another training day, Triet attempted a backflip. Not his first, not his last. At least that's what everyone assumed. But as he launched himself into the air and rotated through space like he had countless times before, something went horribly wrong. He landed directly on his head. The impact was catastrophic, and his arms and legs immediately stopped responding. Paralyzed from the neck down, Triet was rushed to Hanoi's E Hospital. Doctors performed emergency surgery, then transferred him to Bach Mai Hospital to begin what would become a long and heartbreaking battle for survival. He couldn't move. He couldn't breathe on his own, and yet he wanted to live. "I really appreciate life. I want to keep living," he whispered after his second surgery, words that would haunt those around him. His coach, Major Hao Trung Lin, broke down recalling them. "It made me so emotional. He still had the will to fight, but willpower alone couldn't undo the damage." Despite round-the-clock care, Triet's condition worsened. In April, he was transferred to Thanh Nan Hospital, where he spent his final weeks surrounded by doctors, nurses, and a devastated family who never gave up hope. On May 9th, 2024, Nguyen Minh Triet quietly passed away. The silence that followed was deafening. He had been more than just a gymnast. He had been the heart of his family, the third of 4 siblings, yet the one holding everything together. His father, retired and working odd security jobs. His mother, battling cancer. His older brother, too sick to work. His youngest sister, only 5. Every month, Triet gave up his entire salary from training to help support them. A child should never have to carry that kind of weight, and yet he did it without complaint. His coaches described him as relentless, someone who trained harder than anyone else. Not for fame, but for the dream of one day representing Vietnam on the world stage. He'd started gymnastics at just 7 years old and worked his way into the national youth team by age 12. By the time he was 15, he had already swept national titles in the U12, U13, U14, and U15 categories. In 2022, he even brought home a bronze medal for the Army team at Vietnam's 9th National Sports Festival. And he wasn't done. He had plans. He was determined to age out of the youth ranks and fight for a spot on the senior national team. He was also weeks away from graduating high school. But all of that ended in a foam pit that was supposed to catch him. On November 10th, 2023, at the National Sports Training Center in Hanoi, while attempting 2 backflips, Triet fell into that pit. Only instead of bouncing back, his neck snapped under the weight of a miscalculated landing. It should have been safe. That's what everyone thought. But gymnastics doesn't always forgive. In the months that followed, as his body deteriorated and his family watched helplessly, Vietnam's sports community rallied. Donations were raised. The Vietnam Gymnastics Federation and Department of Sports made sure Triet had the best care possible. But no amount of support could undo what had been done. When Triet passed, his coach admitted that somewhere deep down, they had already prepared for this. "We knew the chances were slim, but it doesn't hurt any less," he said, voice cracking. He always fought harder in competition than he did in practice. That spirit, it never left him. More than 200 people gathered for Triet's funeral, because Triet's story isn't just about sport, it's about sacrifice. It was just another summer day at the famed gymnastics school in Deva. Inside the gym, 12-year-old Alexandra Hucci was training quietly, alone, working through a wrist injury that had kept her from full routines. She was small, just 55 pounds, but already carried the weight of Romania's storied gymnastics legacy on her tiny shoulders. Everyone said she had that special spark, and she did, until the moment she didn't. That morning, nothing seemed out of place. Alexandra had been practicing in the pit, focused, determined. Then, without warning, she walked over to her coach, Liliana Cosma, and softly said she needed to go to the restroom. Minutes later, she returned pale, shaken, and whispered that she couldn't continue. She had just thrown up. Her coach didn't hesitate. They went straight to the school doctor. By then, something had already gone terribly wrong. The school's physician examined her and called an ambulance. Alexandra was still conscious when they loaded her in, at least that's what the doctor said, but the nurse who rode with her told a different story. "She was already in a coma when we arrived," the nurse said later, her voice tight with disbelief. "We asked if she had fallen, but were told no. The girl hadn't collapsed from a fall or an impact. Something inside her simply gave out." She was rushed from the pediatric hospital in Deva to the county hospital's ICU. Then, as her condition worsened, she was airlifted 43 minutes to the neurosurgery unit in Timisoara. Her tiny frame, now unconscious and unmoving, was kept alive by tubes and wires, surrounded by flowers and religious icons from strangers who had seen her on the news. Romania was watching. Night after night, her condition was broadcast across the country. Doctors worked urgently, running test after test, but their faces grew graver with each passing hour. A neurosurgeon finally confirmed what no one had suspected. It wasn't trauma. It wasn't from the gym. Alexandra had been living with a hidden congenital defect, a malformation of blood vessels deep in her brain. It had burst. A sudden brain hemorrhage, silent and swift, had robbed her of consciousness. They couldn't see the exact cause. All they knew was that her brain was flooding with blood and she had slipped into a third-degree coma. Time was slipping too. Back in her hometown of Roman, her parents didn't even know what had happened. They lived in a poor village near Faltitseni and didn't have a phone. By the time word finally reached them, their daughter had already spent hours fighting for her life. Alexandra Hucci had begun gymnastics at just 6 years old, full of raw energy and devotion. Like so many Romanian girls before her, she came from hardship and trained with quiet, relentless focus. She had recently been crowned national champion for her age group. She dreamed of following in the footsteps of her idols, the girls who had swept gold at Sydney in 2000. She talked about the Olympics constantly. "I was very happy when Romania won," she said in an interview the year before. standing straight and serious between tumbling passes. I have no time for friends, but I like the gym. She was 12. For 5 days, she fought. The machines kept her breathing, but her light was slipping further away. And on August 20th, 2001, Alexandra died. She never fell. She never cried out. There was no dramatic crash, just a quiet whisper to her coach, a look in her eyes that said something wasn't right, and then nothing. Her story is still whispered in Romania, a little girl who trained with Olympic dreams and collapsed under the weight of something no one could see. No warning, no chance, just a silent defect that waited patiently for its moment.